More than 7 million voters in Cuba will participate from today until April 30th in the referendum on the family code. In Ecuador, the death toll after Monday's deadly floods rose to 21. Authorities also report 5 people missing and 47 injured. Anti-coup protesters across Myanmar defied a junta order not to mark the first anniversary of the military's power grab, with a silent strike and clapping protests on Tuesday. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. More than 7 million voters in Cuba will participate from today until April 30th in the referendum on the family code. According to official sources, in some 78,000 meetings, citizens inside and outside the country will be able to offer their approval, disagreement, or proposals for modification to the project that has already received the consent of the National Assembly. In the dynamic test held between January 27th and 28th, the 12,500 constituency commissions foreseen in the process participated. Authorities foresee the handing over of the proposals in May. Prior to that date, 2 information breaks were planned. On the other hand, Alina Balseiro, the president of the National Electoral Council, confirmed that everything was ready for the consultation to take place, taking into account the biosecurity conditions imposed in times of pandemic.
All measures have been taken so that everyone can participate. An invitation has been given to each voter. All conditions have been taken. We have even worked with the Ministry of Higher Education at the base and at the national level, also including student residences, places where there are mobilized people so that they can join the different meeting points and all the population can participate indistinctly and can issue their opinion.
A journalist with an online news outlet was preparing to record a video interview when he was shot by assailants, becoming the 4th journalist killed in less than a month in Mexico. Armando Linares, director of the local website Monitor Michoacán, said 3 assailants had fatally shot journalist Roberto Toledo in the city of Zitácuaro. Prosecutors in the western state of Michoacán said that they were investigating the report. Linares said the website had received threats for reporting on governmental corruption. The unprecedented spate of killings has put reporters on edge across the country and sparked protests earlier this month. Mexico's government says more than 50 journalists have been slain in Mexico since December 2018.
We must clarify the events and the facts as they occurred. That is to say, it was an attack on a law firm inside his office, which is deeply unfortunate. I believe we must get to the bottom of this matter, and of course, we must always work together to ensure that the information is sufficiently clear.
We update information in Central America, as on Monday, the president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, has confirmed that she will send an official request for support to the United Nations, so the International Commission Against Impunity returns to the country. Eduardo Quinn, Foreign Minister of the Republic, detailed that there being campaign promise and a priority of the first 100 days the request will be sent this week. The diplomat also added that the process has been underway since the president won the national elections. Regarding the date the commission will be installed and the length of time it will be in place, and the Honduran Foreign Minister limited himself to explaining that the technical level requires a more or less considerable time, but the interest of the executive branch will facilitate all avenues and will request maximum cooperation from the Office of the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres. On February 4th, 1992, the Venezuelan people witnessed a military rebellion led by Hugo Chavez that brought back hope in the country's future after dark years for the popular classes. The impact of Chavez's uprising 30 years after the events is brought to you by Leonel Retamal in a series of stories.
The phrase and the image still echo in Venezuela.
Compañeros, lamentablemente, por ahora, los objetivos que nos planteamos no fueron logrados en la ciudad capital. Es decir, nosotros acá en Caracas no logramos controlar el poder.
The chief of the military uprising of February 4th, 1992 wasn't still a key player on the political chessboard, but his words and face were recorded forever in the Venezuelan popular imagery. At the beginning there were some trust issues because the boots of soldiers were responsible for many massacres in Latin America, Venezuela included.
Capitalism in Venezuela has had two ways of ruling over the people. One is with the classic military dictatorship, like the ones of Juan Vicente Gomez and Marcos Pérez Jiménez. That runs out of luck with the events of January 1958, when the liberal representative regime was imposed, and that was the case for 40 years. But by February 1989, the popular rebellion managed to pull the brakes on the neoliberal policies that the ruling class and foreign interests were trying to force on the country. With that, they were through. The cat was out of the bag. It was public knowledge that it was not a system with popular support. They crushed that with the army, and 3 years later, something similar happened to the military rebellion of February 4th, 1992, and also in November that same year. But the main one was February's uprising, which counted with Commander Chavez's leadership. By then, the regime was exhausted politically, economically, socially. The people didn't believe in anything anymore. The inconformity grew, but there was still a void regarding the front lines, the leader or party that could represent the people's voice.
There is a consensus around the issue of the uprising being planned ahead, despite Venezuela being the most stable country in the region after 30 years of a political system tied to the prices of oil and with two parties that shared power and kept it to themselves. A social outburst occurred in 1989 protesting against the neoliberal reforms boosted by the International Monetary Fund. These massive street takeovers left hundreds of dead and thousands missing to this day.
That's the tipping point of what had been the pact of a steady ruling among the elite classes. It shows how fragmented all of that structure was as an element of dissuasion in a country that the elites had used. The military showed all these cracks in that structure because the first process of the Caracazo revealed the economic troubles inside of it all, and it also revealed the crisis deep inside the dominant political parties. What really happened there? I know a phrase, it's Jose Marti's. It goes, it's not that men do not make the people, but that the people at their time of genesis tend to become vibrant and triumphant in only one man. There was a massive political void in the country, and the Venezuelan people felt as though they saw themselves reflected in that very short speech given by Commander Chavez.
There is consensus among revolutionaries, historians, even opposing sectors regarding the events of February 4th as a military failure. However, they were a political success in the midterm, for in 1998 Chavez won the presidential elections, making that year a breaking point for the country's most recent chapter in history.
Leonel Retamal, TeleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
Thank you, Leonel, for the report, and we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Costa Rica, presidential candidates will hold a debate on Tuesday, 5 days before the 2022 general elections. At least 7 presidential candidates will participate in the debate, which will be held at the Universidad Latina de Costa Rica. The transmission of the dialogue will begin with a political analysis and will last for approximately 2 hours. Let's remember that during the month of January, around 7 provincial debates were held with the participation of candidates to the Congress of the Republic. The initiative seeks to offer citizens the possibility to know the ideas, proposals, and solutions proposed to the country's problems. This Monday in Colombia, Jose Euclides González Marín, a social leader in the north of Cauca, in the southwest of the country, was murdered. With this crime, the number of social leaders executed in Colombia so far in 2022 reaches 14. González, who was vice president of the Association of Workers of El Calacoto Farmers Reserve Zones, was killed by armed men at around 4 p.m. local time in El Plejo Rural Reserve Zone. The Institute for Development and Peace Studies and other human rights organizations denounced the murder of the leader, who was also an active member of labor and human rights organizations in the area. In the past, figures show that 1,300 social leaders have already been murdered since the signing of the peace accords. Now we address other topics. In Ecuador, on Monday, at least 21 people died due to floods in La Gasca neighborhood, north of Quito. The heavy rains that fell this Monday afternoon, January 31st, 2022, in Quito, caused a flood in the sector of La Gasca in the north, which flooded streets and caused material damages. The emergency service, ECU 911, confirmed that so far, at least 21 people died and another 200 were affected. 5 are currently missing and 47 are injured, as well as 10 power poles collapsed and the Miraflores substation was affected by the flood. Witnesses at the location said that a large amount of water, mud and stones flooded down the streets, affected homes and dragging vehicles. The flood dragged everything in its path, small and large rocks, branches, trees, debris and other materials. In Haiti, more than 2,500 homes were affected by flooding as a result of the rains of the last few hours. The rains are associated with a cold front that on Monday was over the neighboring Dominican Republic, a country that keeps more than 10 provinces on alert. Haitian authorities warned that some 20 municipalities are flooded, among them those belonging to the North, Northeast and NIPS departments. They also reported that the Caracol power plant was also affected by the floods, as well as the main road of Ferrier in the northeast of the island. Civil protection authorities are closely following the meteorological situation, which according to forecasts will last until this Tuesday. On Monday, the Spanish multinational company Repsol expressed its full willingness to collaborate with Peruvian authorities in order to guarantee the supply of products and ensure the resumption of operations, despite the fact that the Peruvian government will order the loading and unloading of the oil tankers. The oil company expressed its willingness to guarantee the presence of essential products that allow the development of the country, since it supplies 40% of the Peruvian fuel market. They also rejected the government's consideration that Repsol's operations are disproportionate and unreasonable after more than 10,000 barrels of crude oil were spilled in the province of Callao on January 15th. At present, the oil cleanup operations are still active. Early on Monday, the Peruvian government decided to suspend the company's activities in the country.
First, we call for a halt to all hydrocarbon loading and unloading activities in the Peruvian Sea by the company Repsol, until it provides us with technical guarantees that no further damage will be done to the sea that belongs to all Peruvians.
Now we move on to other topics. Russia assumed the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of February, amid tensions with Ukraine and Western powers. As Moscow has reiterated on numerous occasions, the West is carrying out an anti-Russian campaign and accuses them of allegedly preparing to attack Ukraine, while the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is seeking to increase its military presence in the area. The day before, the Russian representative to the multilateral body once again raised these concerns before the UN Security Council at a meeting convened by the United States. According to Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, Washington is trying to mislead the world community about the real situation in Ukraine. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Moscow. The leaders discussed bilateral ties as well as security issues on the European continent and regional conflicts. Prime Minister Orban has taken a softer line on the Ukraine crisis that followed North Atlantic Treaty Organization and other EU members. The Hungarian senior diplomat said his country aimed to reach an agreement to increase the country's gas imports from Russia at a time when some in Europe accused Moscow of orchestrating an energy crisis to pressure European countries.
I have high hopes that we can work together for many years to come. I would like to assure you that no EU leader wants war and conflict.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a decree on Tuesday to increase the size of the country's armed forces by 100,000 troops over 3 years and raise soldiers' salaries. In an address to Parliament, the head of state said the decree did not mean war with Russia was imminent and urged the lawmakers to stay calm and united, not to show panic, and also not to exploit a standoff with Moscow for political gain. North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states have rallied around Ukraine in recent weeks, with the United States, Britain and Poland among countries offering military aid and calling for tough sanctions on Moscow if Russia launches an attack. Moscow has denied any plans to invade Ukraine, but has demanded sweeping security guarantees from the West, including a promise that Kiev can never join the NATO. The president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, on Tuesday unveiled the Olympic Truce mural at a ceremony in the Beijing Olympic Village, along with athletes and the delegation of different countries. The establishment of the Olympic Truce mural is a peaceful activity that honors the tradition of the ancient Greek Olympic truce, aiming to convey the concept on the peace and beauty. Bash took the lead in signing of the mural together with Jiang Xuan, the vice president of the Beijing Organizing Committee for the 2022 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. The Truce mural for the Beijing 2022, named The Light of Peace, was inspired by traditional Chinese lanterns that symbolize family reunion. The Games are scheduled to take place from February 4th to 20th. Quarantine training centers and a bubble the size of a small city, departure tests and arrival tests, as well as daily tests, are among the measures taken to prevent COVID-19 contagion. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Anti-coup protesters across Myanmar defied a junta order not to mark the first anniversary of the military's power grab, with a silent strike and clapping protests on Tuesday. Residents across Yangon and in the second city of Mandalay clapped in mass, marking the end of a silent strike against the coup. The military takeover that ended the Southeast Asian country's brief democratic interlude and ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has triggered mass protests and a crackdown on dissent. According to a local monitoring group, the junta has killed more than 1,000 civilians since the takeover. Ahead of the anniversary, the junta had threatened to seize businesses that shuttered and warned that noisy rallies or sharing anti-military propaganda could lead to treason or terrorism charges. As people across Myanmar mark the anniversary of last year's military takeover by shutting businesses and staying home in a nationwide silent strike, what appeared to be several dozen people in the capital Naypyidaw rallied in support of the generals. Video provided by the military authorities showed a crowd of people listening to speeches in the field before marching down the streets, with some carrying banners. Naypyidaw is the seat of government and is home to a large workforce of civil servants directly employed by the authorities. And the United Nations appealed for 826 million to meet the needs of 6.2 million people in Myanmar this year. According to the spokesperson for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Jens Lerck, this is the largest appeal ever for the country.
2022 humanitarian response plan for Myanmar has been published, requesting a record $826 million to reach 6.2 million people with assistance this year. The plan this year is more ambitious than last year's, asking more than twice the amount, and it reflects the growing crisis that has plunged an estimated 14.4 million people across the country into humanitarian need. 5 million of them are children.
Heavy gunfire was heard on Tuesday in the capital of Guinea-Bissau, near a government compound where the President Umaro Sissoco Embalo was holding a cabinet meeting. A security source with contacts inside the building said people had been hit by the gunfire. A second source said 2 people were dead, but it was unclear if there were security forces or those who launched the attack. Political instability has blighted the country for decades. 9 coups or attempted coups since independence from Portugal in 1974 had hobbled efforts to put the economy beyond its reliance on the export of cashew nuts. International envoys of the Economic Community of West African States and the United Nations met in Burkina Faso's capital with coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. The international envoys also met with Rochemar Christian Kabore, who was ousted as president after the military junta seized power on January 24th and is under house arrest. According to the West African delegation leader Shirley Ayokor Botchway, the foreign minister of Ghana, the discussions were frank and open to suggestions and proposals. The talks came shortly after the African Union suspended Burkina for the January 24th takeover. ECOWAS has suspended Burkina Faso from its ranks and warned of possible sanctions pending the outcome of the talks with the junta.
During this extraordinary summit, the heads of states not only condemned Burkina Faso, but they also asked the mission come and exchange with the authorities here to take stock on the situation and see what the future holds. They also asked that during this visit we meet with the president, which is what we have just done. We have seen that he is in good health, and he appears to be. But we will obviously report to the heads of state on the exchanges we have had. We had frank exchanges.
The annual report presented from Palestine by the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor points out that the blockade implemented by Israel since 2007 continues to aggravate the economic and social situation in the Gaza Strip, causing the exponential growth of poverty. The study, carried out by the non-governmental organization, pointed out that the punitive measure adopted by Israel continues to cause an alarming effect that evidences massive economic and social damages. The figure indicated an increase in poverty from 40% to 69%, as well as the unemployment rate, which went from 23.6% before the implementation of the blockade to 50.2% by 2021. It was also evidenced in the annual report the reduction of the contribution of Gaza to the Palestinian economy, which dropped by half to 18% in 2021. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.